Hi, friends. Sorry I can't be there this morning. I'm over in Christian relationships right now. So just want to do the emphasis lecture with you and then go over the things that you need to do by the time we meet again. So hopefully during class today, you can knock a lot of this out. First of all, 4.3, right after this, jump over and take that College Board assessment. There is an ATM attached to that. I've gotten away from ATMs recently, but they're back. So if you get less than a 3, jump over and take that ATM and get those points back. Also, remember that progress check for Unit 5 is due by Friday, which is also quiz day. So if you finish your quiz early, you might be able to do the progress check at that time. And then third, we are going to review. So make sure that you review. The web review is posted for you. Lots of different review avenues for you. So make sure you check those out. And then finally, video lecture 4.4. So we're going to hit the ground running from there. Cool. Let's get to it. So we're talking about price discrimination today. Price discrimination is concept 4.3, our final concept before the quiz. So remember, when a firm price discriminates, they can only do this when they have certain conditions in place. So firms would love to price discriminate all the time because they want to maximize their profits. Price discrimination simply means I charge people what they're willing to pay. There are no discounts, right? Everybody, if you're willing to pay $100, I want to find a way to make sure that you pay $100. And if you're willing to pay $10, I'd like to sell you something too. So I'm going to find a way to sell it for you for $10 to somebody else for $100. Try to make sure both of you don't know about each other and make sure that we are not violating any federal laws. If a firm can do this, then they can actually push their profits up. So a couple of conditions have to be in place. First, a firm has to have monopoly power. So you got to know this. A firm has to have control over the market. The demand curve has to be downward sloping in their monopoly market firm graph, right? So they have to have some power over the market, monopoly power. Second, they have to be able to legally segregate the market, right? There is a legal price discrimination. There are protected groups in the United States, so you cannot price discriminate based on gender, based on ethnicity, based on a couple of additional factors that are protected people. I can't, nationality. I can't charge people different prices because of who they are. But there are ways to legally segregate in the market. For example, I can segregate based on time, right? If people are willing to get here early, they get a better price. Senior discounts is a type of segregation. Hey, seniors are less willing to part with their money, so I'm going to sell it to seniors for a little bit less. So segregation of the market is really, really important. There are legal ways to do that. And then third, you can prevent the resale of the product or the service. Most of this has to do with making sure that people don't know about each other, right? If I don't know that I'm buying this at a lower price than somebody else, then I'm not likely to buy a bunch of them in bulk and then resell them for that higher price to get the profits, right? So by keeping people in the dark about the various prices and making sure that's not available to them to know this, I can prevent the buying up and reselling of my product, which takes away my profits. Okay. So, first things first, this actually happens in our economy right now. For example, Home Depot has a price discrimination. They call it personalized pricing, price discrimination that they do based on your computer, right? The zip code. If you go on to homedepot.com and it always says, hey, use our zip code to find your closest retail outlet, for example, and you can agree to that. But even without that, your IP address comes along with the location. And so Home Depot actually charges you a different price based on how close you are to a Home Depot store. If you're very close to a Home Depot store, then your price is going to be lower and closer to what it actually is in the store because they know you have options. I can either get it online or I can go in the store and I can check between the two. So you're going to have a lower price if you're near a Home Depot store, an actual in-person store. However, if you're located in an area where you're far away from the most recent Home Depot, like a half hour or an hour and a half or more, if you're far away, you're going to pay a higher price because it's unlikely that you're going to be able to go to a Home Depot store. You don't have those options. They have monopoly power in that moment because they're the only place selling that online, for example. And so they push the price higher. Orbitz, who does hotels and vacation, basically. So you can get flights through Orbitz, sort of like a Hotwire kind of deal. Orbitz, since 2012, so it's 9 years now, they have been selling or pricing hotels higher for people that are buying from a MacBook, right? People who have Apples are likely to pay more for a hotel, so they charge a higher price. Airliners use a ton of factors, right? The closer you get to the date of your flight, it is likely that the price is going to get higher. Why? Well, if I'm booking for a flight by the end of the week, my elasticity is much more inelastic, right? I have to buy it. I need that flight. I don't have a lot of options. So if the price is really high, I pay it because I have to get on that flight. Whereas if I'm highly elastic, like I'm buying it 4 months ahead of time, it's likely that they charge me a lower price because if it's not the right price, I just won't buy that airline ticket and I'll keep on searching or I'll keep on waiting, right? So oftentimes it has to do with elasticity. But they're getting even better at this. Is crazy with the amount of data that these firms have. They're actually tracking you all of the time, and so soon it's coming. They can actually track you in store and online, right? And you're like, well, how can they track me in store? They track you in store with your phone, right? They can see the route that you take through their store based on the data from your phone. Utilizing that data, they can start to generate a profile between what you buy online and what you buy in person and start to give you personalized prices. So that's price discrimination in practice. It happens today, but the only reason it can happen is first, it doesn't violate any laws. Second, they have monopoly power. Third, they can segregate, oftentimes using data and using computerized practices. And then fourth, they can prevent your resale mainly by keeping you in the dark that is happening at all. Cool. Okay. What's it look like on a graph? Well, a perfectly price discriminating firm has a couple of things. First, they maximize profits. They make more profits than a monopoly on its own, right? So if this were a monopoly, let me graph on here a little bit. If this were a monopoly, marginal revenue would be downward sloping like this, right? And so my MR equals MC would be here, my demand would be here, my price would be there, and my profit would just be this little box right there. Compare that to the price discriminating box, which is this entire large rectangle and triangle green. Clearly, profit is much, much higher when you price discriminate, which makes sense. I can sell goods for maximum price to people who are willing to pay maximum price, and minimum price for people who are willing to pay minimum price. Cool. Second, it eliminates consumer surplus. Remember, consumer surplus is the difference between what I'm willing to pay and what I actually pay. A perfectly price discriminating firm charges everybody what they're willing to pay. There's no difference. So if I'm willing to pay 100 and I actually pay 100, 100 minus 100 is zero. So a perfectly price discriminating, there's a zero. Personally, perfectly price discriminating firm will have a consumer surplus of zero. Third, and maybe most surprisingly, perfectly price discriminating firms, monopolies, actually produce a socially optimal amount because there's a profit incentive to do so. I'm going to sell it to everybody because I can sell it to them at the absolute top price. And so there's additional profits to be made here. So actually, if I compare that like I did before, here, my quantity would have been lower if I were a normal monopoly. My price would have been higher, right? But when they price discriminate, they actually produce where demand equals marginal cost or where demand equals, remember, we call this sneaky supply, right? In other words, we are at the socially optimal quantity. We don't charge the socially optimal price because every single person gets a personalized price, but we do produce at the socially optimal quantity, which of course is going to mean no dead weight loss. So keep that in mind. If you're asking, hey, you were a monopoly, now you're perfectly competitive, where are you going to produce? It's where demand equals marginal cost or where sneaky supply equals demand. Every time they will produce the socially optimal quantity. Cool. All right. What's it look like on the graph? Well, on the graph, because I can charge everybody the price they're willing to pay, marginal revenue is going to be equal to demand again. No longer is marginal revenue underneath it. Demand equals marginal revenue. They are the same. Second, you're never going to have a price with a price discriminating monopoly. Everybody gets a different price. We call this personalized pricing. You pay what you're willing to pay. And because the firm has the data to do it, they make sure that they're charging us slightly higher. For example, Amazon actually charges, this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but they actually charge women more for shoes and less for grills. So more for things that women might buy on Amazon and less for things that they might not buy. And for a male, they flip that. They change the prices a little bit more for what a male would buy rather than a girl. Right. And they track everything. What you click on, what you have bought before, all of your order history is tracked and helps inform them on what those prices will be. In fact, Amazon changes prices for individuals, not for everybody, but for individuals every 10 minutes. Think of the power that they have to control prices for those things. Crazy. All right. As a result, there is no dead weight loss, right? There's no difference where I am and where I want to be because I am at the socially optimal quantity. And then finally, there is no consumer surplus at all. Everybody pays what they're willing to pay. What used to be consumer surplus is now a part of this giant profitability rectangle and triangle. Cool. That's price discrimination. Your college board assessment is ready for you. Try it out. And then you have an ATM there to help you out as well. If you still have time in class after you do those two things, make sure you jump into some review work. And I will see you hopefully by the end of this class. But if not, I will see you on Friday for quiz day. All right. Take care, guys. Peace.